Hi, I'm Allison of BEBOP and Knit, and today I'm going to be showing a tutorial on various parts of the This World shawl, which is an asymmetrical triangle shawl that's knit up in DK weight yarn using 2-color fisherman's rib and single color fisherman's rib. And for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be showing how to join your contrast color, how to do your right lifted increase knitwise, right lifted increase purlwise, and some of the nuances of knitting 2-color fisherman's rib. Just some helpful tips to help you seamlessly shift between colors. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to knit across my row. With 2-color fisherman's rib, we are always going to be knitting in our main color or contrast color, depending on which side you're on. Then you'll slide your work and you'll knit with the second color, and then you'll turn. So you'll knit every row 2 times. So I've knit my 3 I-cord stitches. Now I'm going to knit below, purl, knit 1 below, purl, and now I'm at the I-cord edge and I'm going to do an increase. My first increase is going to be the right lifted increase knitwise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the leg of my first I-cord stitch and pop it onto my left hand needle, and then I'm going to knit 1 stitch, and I have now increased 1 for this row. Okay, I'm going to then bring my yarn to the front, slip 3 stitches for my I-cord edge, and now I'm going to slide my work, and I'm going to join my contrast color. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to slide 3 stitches, okay, and I'm going to take my contrast color, don't mind me, sorry. With the tail in front, I'm going to bring that yarn in between my needles, hold it there, and with my working yarn kind of held tight so nothing slips, I'm going to slip those stitches back onto my left hand needle, and then I'm going to knit across those 3 stitches. Pretty simple. Join. All right, so what I'm going to do now is the previous row, using my main color yarn, I was doing knit 1 below, purl 1. Now I'm going to knit 1, purl 1 below. So I'm going to knit 1, bring my yarn into the front, and I'm going to purl 1 below. For this purl 1 below, you want to really make sure that you're underneath that purl bump of the previous stitch. Purl 1 below. Okay, I go back to knit 1, purl 1 below. Again, really make sure you're getting into that stitch correctly. Okay, and then I'm going to knit my last stitch, and I'm going to turn now. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky with 2-color fisherman's rib or brioche or anything that requires 2 separate yarns, and you're knitting below or you're doing yarn overs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip these 3 stitches, sorry, and I hold my yarn really nice and tight, so that way these 2 working yarns don't get twisted. The reason you don't want them to twist is that you'll end up seeing those colors alternating incorrectly or twisting in your I-cord edge, or you'll have the wrong color showing up into this rib or purl ridge once you've finished. So as I'm turning, I use my index finger of my left hand to pinch that yarn against my needle, turn my work, and you see how on the back, you can see my contrast color working yarn is still pinched to the needle as I have my working yarn now, which is my main color yarn, getting ready to be worked in my right hand. And once I've got those nice and secure, then I can drop that yarn, okay? So, and because the first stitch on the wrong side is not going to be worked in the stitch below, we don't have to worry too much about where this contrast color yarn hangs out. All right. And I totally just lied. It is actually a purl below. So on the wrong side, we are going to be purling below now with our main color and knitting below with our contrast color. So it's the opposite of the right side. And so because we're going to be purling below into this first stitch, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to make sure that that contrast color yarn is held nice and tight in your right hand using another finger. Okay, you see how my thumb is wiggling over here? That's where that contrast color is. The reason for that is that this loose yarn is making up part of this stitch here. Okay, so we really want to make sure that we don't miss it when we're going under that purl bump. We really need this yarn to hang out over here to open up that stitch and make it so that way we don't end up, say if my yarn was over here, oops, don't drop the I-cord stitches. Okay, we want to make sure if our yarn was hanging out over here, it's really easy to skip that. Do you see that? Where you would go into that purl below, you're like, yeah, I'm doing great. But then you'd get to the end and you'd see that you'd have this twist or this hanging out little like ridge over your stitch here. Okay, so we want to make sure, again, I've got my working yarn held where I'm going to be knitting. My contrast color is just being held over here to the side in my hand, so that way I can very easily go into that purl bump or that purl below, right under the purl bump, with my contrast color yarn still off to the side so that stitch is nice and open. Okay, I work that stitch and everything just kind of zoops, slides right into place. Okay, so now I'm going to knit one, purl one below, knit one, purl one below, and I'm going to slide my 3 I-cord edge stitches. Okay, now we are going to slide our work to go back across that row with our contrast color. Okay, so I'm going to knit my 3 I-cord edge stitches. And as I said before, because we're on the wrong side, we're going to now be knitting one below with our contrast color. Okay, so we're going to purl one, knit one below, okay, purl one, knit one below, and I'm going into this V. So you're aiming for that bottom part of the stitch to make sure that you don't cut anything off. Okay, and then I purl one at the end, slip my I-cord edge stitches, pull that tight enough that it slides into place, but not too tight that your stitch gets like squinched. I don't know if squinched is a word, but we're gonna go with it. So again, as I'm going to turn my work, I'm going to hold my contrast color against my needle. And the way I do that is I pinch it, hold it in place as I pick up my main color yarn. So that way I'm not getting them twisted. Okay. And now that I have my main color secure, I'm going to drop that contrast color yarn because on this side, we are now going to have to go under this stitch, but we have to open it again like we did with that purl bump. We need to open up that stitch nicely so that way you catch this part of the working yarn from the previous row. Okay, so again, I'm gonna hold my contrast color, pinch between my other fingers and my right hand, so that way you can see this bar here opens up that stitch. Okay, let me kind of wiggle it so you can kind of see. So I would be going into this stitch, and you want to make sure that you catch this leg. This leg stays over here and open. If I don't, I might end up accidentally only going into half of the stitch, right? If I only ended up going onto this leg here. Sorry, I have it nice and open, so it's hard for me to show you that. But that's the fear you would have. Okay, is that you would only end up going through half of that stitch, and then you'd end up with this weird, goofy looking, like, I've seen it show up as like a cross over this stitch, or tightly twisted in your I-cord. Those are the two most common ways I've seen it get twisted. All right, so I've knit my first stitch below, then I go to purl, knit one below, purl, knit one below, okay, and then I slide, okay. All right, so do you see how it's starting to come out, where this side is pretty obviously the right side because your main color is showing, and this is the wrong side where those nice knit ridges are starting to form using your contrast color. All right. All right, so now that I've kind of caught up, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you how to do the right lifted increase purlwise. So we're gonna start with our main color. I'm gonna knit across those I-cord stitches. And again, I will show you my little trick for making sure that I'm going into those the stitch below correctly. So I hold my contrast color yarn tight in my right hand to make sure that stitch is nice and opened up. Okay, and I'm gonna just kind of separate and make sure that I'm really getting in there. You're gonna want to just take this slow. If this is new to you, just take it slow. So you've got this stitch and you've got to make sure that you've opened it up. Okay, so you see where that previous like orange stitch is, and you see how my yarn is over the top. That gray yarn is over the top. Okay, I knit one below, pull, and it just kind of slides into place. Okay, now I'm going to purl one, knit one below, purl, knit one below, and now I'm at my my I-cord edge where I'm going to make my increase. So I'm gonna pick up this right leg from my I-cord stitch, put it onto my left hand needle, and with my yarn in front, I'm going to purl the stitch. And now I have increased, and I've dropped another I-cord stitch. All right, I've increased one stitch using the right lifted increase purlwise. Okay, I will slip those stitches, and just for the sake of seeing it one more time, I will work across these stitches for you so we can see that turn one more time. All right, so I'm gonna knit into this stitch, I'm gonna purl one below, knit one, purl one below, making sure I'm under that purl bump, knit one, and this one can be a little bit funky too. So I want to really make sure that the previous working yarn is tight in my left hand, so that way I can really make sure that I'm opening up that stitch. Sorry, I'm kind of sliding. So I insert my needle, yarn over, well, I guess it's not a yarn over, sorry, we just go to purl that one below. Okay, and then I pull it so it's nice and snug. Okay, so, and do you see what I mean when I said that it'll kind of just slide into place as I knit across those stitches or purl those stitches? All of those knit belows, all of the opposite color slides right into place, making that nice squishy double fabric. All right, so let's turn our work one more time so that way you can see how I do my little trick. So holding my current working yarn, I pinch that yarn against my needle, turn my work, still pinching that yarn in my hand, I go to insert. I've now secured my current working yarn in my right hand, and I knit that first stitch or two, and then I drop the contrast yarn. Okay, so that way it's nice and loose. And for this particular side, this is now true where I'm not having to worry about a knit below stitch or a purl below stitch on that first stitch. So I'm going to knit one, purl one below. Oops. Knit one, purl one below, knit one, purl one below, and then I slide those I-cord stitches of my yarn in front. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bonus pro tip here. When I go to step away from my work and I'm doing 2-color fisherman's rib or brioche, and I want to make sure that I'm not going to twist my stitches for that I-cord edge, I finish with only knitting across one yarn, or only knitting across with one yarn. So if I were to get up and go get a cup of coffee or something, I would set my work down at this stage where I've knit across row A and I have not yet worked row B. And the reason I do that is so that way I don't have to worry about whether I've accidentally twisted my yarns when it gets set down, right? Or it gets shoved into a project bag, right? Now I know for sure, especially if I've done my due diligence and I've written it down where I've finished, or where I left off, then I'm not twisting anything. Everything is as I left it. Okay, so that is some of the those are some of my tricks for 2-color fisherman's rib, how I do my increases for the right lifted increase knitwise, right lifted increase purlwise, and how I join my contrast color. All right, I hope you enjoy knitting up this World Shawl.